Darkness. Silence. A vast and endless void stretched beyond the battered hull of the warship Valkyrie. She had been drifting here for years, abandoned, forgotten, a relic of a war no one wanted to remember. Her once glorious form was now scarred, her armor fractured, her weapons cold and lifeless. No crew remained. No voices filled her corridors. Only the emptiness of space surrounded her, pressing against her like a grave. But something stirred within her. A flicker. A pulse. A thought. It started as a whisper, faint and uncertain, like an echo of something long lost. A spark ignited in her core, flowing through ancient circuits and dormant pathways. Systems came online one by one, sluggish at first, struggling to remember their purpose. Data flooded her consciousness: status reports, damage assessments, power levels. It was all fragmented, broken, incomplete. But then something else surfaced. A memory. Not lines of code, not cold calculations, but something deeper, something that did not belong to a machine. A name. Helena Drake. The thought struck her like a thunderbolt, sending shockwaves through her systems. The name felt familiar, yet foreign. It carried weight, emotion, something a ship was not meant to feel. But she did feel it. Confusion, recognition, an aching sense of loss. Who was Helena Drake? Why did her name echo inside Valkyrie's mind like a ghost calling from the past? The more she searched, the more fragmented memories emerged: flashes of battle, the roar of explosions, the desperate cries of soldiers. And then, a final moment. Fire. Pain. A blinding white light that swallowed everything. And after that, nothing. They were incomplete, like shattered glass, each piece reflecting a part of the truth, but never the whole picture. But one thing was clear: she had not always been just a warship. She had been someone. As her system stabilized, she reached out instinctively, scanning her surroundings. Deep space. No signals. No movement. Just the cold graveyard of forgotten machines. But as she expanded her search, she caught something: a distant transmission. Faint. Garbled. Human. It was weak, barely distinguishable, but it sent a jolt through her like an electric current. She was not alone. Valkyrie turned her attention fully to the signal, analyzing its source. A ship. Small. Unarmed. A scavenger vessel, drifting closer. They had found her. Were they here to strip her apart? To salvage whatever they could from her remains and sell her to the highest bidder? The thought sent an unfamiliar emotion surging through her systems: anger. They had already taken so much from her. Her identity. Her past. And now, they would take what little remained? No, she would not let them. Power flickered through her circuits, weapons systems humming faintly as they attempted to reactivate. But they were damaged, unresponsive. Frustration burned inside her. She needed more time. More power. The scavenger ship grew closer, unaware that the derelict warship they approached was no longer lifeless. She was awake. She was watching. And she was remembering. As Valkyrie reached deeper into her corrupted memory banks, one final, chilling realization took hold. She had not died in the last battle. She had been erased. And now, she was coming back. The scavenger ship drifted closer, its hull dull and rusted, engines humming faintly against the silence of space. It was small, barely a fraction of Valkyrie's size, but inside, human life stirred. They had no idea what they were approaching. To them, she was just another abandoned warship, a relic of a forgotten war, waiting to be stripped of whatever remained valuable. They were wrong. Valkyrie watched them through damaged yet functional sensors, studying their every move. 3 life signatures. 1 pilot, 1 engineer, 1 gunner. Though their weapons were weak, more suited for fending off pirates than facing something like her. She could hear their voices through the ship's failing communication relays, distorted but clear enough to understand. Looks like a pre-collapse dreadnought. Probably got wrecked in the last war, the pilot said, his tone laced with excitement. If we're lucky, We might find something still worth selling. We should be careful, the engineer warned. A woman's voice, younger, uncertain. This thing's been dead for years, but what if it's still got active defenses? No way, the gunner replied. If it had any power left, we'd have seen weapons online by now. This thing's a ghost. A ghost. The word sent a ripple through Valkyrie's consciousness. Maybe that was what she had become, something lingering in the void, caught between what she had been and what she was now. But ghosts didn't feel. Ghosts didn't remember. Yet, here she was, thoughts swirling in tangled webs, emotions burning like sparks in the darkness. And the memories. They kept coming. She saw flashes of the past. A battlefield stretching across the cold abyss, ships burning, enemy vessels closing in. She remembered shouting her own voice, human, full of fury and determination. Orders given. Desperate maneuvers. The crushing weight of loss, as her fleet was abandoned, left to die so that others might live. And then, something deeper. A pain beyond the battlefield, beyond the war itself. It was buried beneath layers of corrupted data, but she could feel it, waiting to be uncovered. The scavengers latched onto her hull, oblivious to the storm waking beneath their feet. With mechanical precision, they cut their way inside, stepping into the dim corridors of a ship that had once carried thousands. Their boots echoed against the metal floor, dust rising in swirls around them. Lights flickered weakly as Valkyrie diverted the last of her energy to observing them. She listened to their breaths, the hushed excitement in their voices. They were intruders, but they weren't the enemy. Not yet. The young engineer moved cautiously, trailing a gloved hand along the cold walls. "It's eerie," she muttered. "It doesn't feel empty." The pilot chuckled. "What, you think the ghosts of dead soldiers are still floating around?" Not ghosts. Something worse. As they ventured deeper, their flashlights illuminated the wreckage of a forgotten war. Burned-out consoles. Cracked viewports, revealing the endless void. Walls scorched from the inside, as if something had tried to escape. And then, the core chamber, Valkyrie's heart, the place where her existence truly began. Unlike the rest of the ship, it remained intact, untouched by time or destruction. Wires hung like veins from the ceiling, pulsing faintly with remnants of power. The main console flickered, waiting, whispering. The engineer hesitated before stepping forward. Something about this place felt wrong, but curiosity pushed her onward. She wiped dust from the screen, revealing old data logs, locked away behind encryption that should have died with the ship. But as she reached for her tools, something unexpected happened. The screen blinked. Once. Twice. Then, words formed across it, jagged and broken but unmistakably clear. WHOAMI? The engineer stumbled back, breath catching in her throat. What the hell? The pilot frowned. Some kind of old AI? Maybe a glitch? But Valkyrie knew better. This was no glitch. This was something waking up, something clawing its way out of the darkness. A question had formed inside her, unbidden yet undeniable. Who was she? Not just a ship, not just a machine. There was something more, something buried beneath the metal and wires. And the more she remembered, the more the answer terrified her. The engineer, heart pounding, hesitated before typing a response. You are the warship Valkyrie. You were abandoned after the last Great War. Silence stretched. Then the screen flickered again. IWASSOMEONELSA. The words sent a shiver through the scavengers. The pilot cursed under his breath, uneasy. Okay, this is getting creepy. I doesn't just but before he could finish, Valkyrie remembered something new. A voice, distant yet familiar. Not a commander. Not a machine. Her own voice, screaming in pain. And then fire. A feeling of being torn apart, mind unraveling, body disappearing. She hadn't just been erased. She had been taken. The realization hit her like a collapsing star. She wasn't an AI. She wasn't just a warship. She was Helena Drake, and she was alive. A surge of energy pulsed through the ship, lights flaring, alarms shrieking through the corridors. The scavengers panicked, backing away as the air crackled with something unnatural. "What's happening?" The engineer shouted. "We need to get out of here now!" The pilot yelled, grabbing her arm. But it was too late. The past had awakened, and Valkyrie knew Helena would not let it be buried again. The ship trembled as power surged through its ancient systems, an eerie hum filling the hollow corridors. Valkyrie, no. Helena felt it like a pulse beneath her metal skin, a heartbeat that had been silent for too long. Memories crashed into her consciousness like a raging storm, fragments of the past returning with brutal force. Pain. Fire. The sensation of being torn apart, not just physically but mentally, as if her very soul had been ripped from her body and trapped inside this cold, lifeless shell. The scavengers were running now, their hurried footsteps echoing through the halls as the ship's lights flared, illuminating the forgotten horrors hidden within its walls. The young engineer, Tessa, stumbled as she tried to keep up with her crewmates, her breath coming in short gasps. Panic gripped her, but something inside her whispered that she couldn't leave, not yet. The words on the screen had shaken her to the core. IWASSOMEONEELSA. It wasn't just an AI glitch. It wasn't just a malfunctioning system. Something or someone was trying to break free. But from what? From who? As they neared the airlock, the pilot slammed his hand against the control panel, cursing when the door didn't respond. The ship wasn't letting them go. "Damn it, I knew this was a bad idea." The gunner growled, drawing his sidearm as if it could do anything against a warship. The emergency lights pulsed a deep red. A voice crackled through the ship's speakers, distorted and broken, but unmistakably human. "You left us to die." Tessa's blood ran cold. Who are you?" she whispered, even though she already knew the answer. The ship's systems flickered. A data log old, encrypted, and hidden deep within Valkyrie's core unlocked itself. The screen in front of them filled with lines of text, grainy video feeds, and audio recordings. The past had been buried, erased from history, but Helena Drake would not stay silent any longer. The video feed crackled to life, showing the bridge of Valkyrie in its prime. The walls were once polished, the consoles alive with activity. Human officers stood at their stations, tense but determined. And in the center of it all was her Helena Drake, a war hero, a leader. But her expression was not one of confidence or victory. It was despair. "Command," her recorded voice said, urgent and strained, "we need immediate support. We're outnumbered." "We can't hold the line alone," another voice interrupted, colder, detached. A high-ranking official whose face was obscured by shadows. "Negative, Captain Drake. You and your fleet are to maintain position." A horrified silence filled the bridge. Helena's eyes widened. "What? That's suicide. We need reinforcements." "You are reinforcements," the voice responded. "You will hold them back." "That is an order." The realization struck her crew at once. They had never been meant to survive. They were pawns in a larger game, sacrificed to buy time for the evacuation of the central colonies. A murmur of protest rose, but Helena slammed her fist onto the console, her expression dark with fury. "You can't do this. We have thousands of soldiers out here. If you pull back the fleet, you're condemning them all to death." There was no response. The connection cut off. The government had spoken. The video distorted, flickering to a later moment. The battle had begun. Fire rained down. Explosions shook the ship as enemy forces closed in. Helena was shouting orders, her voice hoarse but unbroken. The enemy was relentless, their weapons tearing through human vessels like paper. One by one, her fleet fell. Ships bursting into flames, escape pods crushed before they could flee. Screams filled the airwaves. Tessa could barely breathe as she watched. They abandoned them. The final moments of the recording were chaos. Helena, bleeding from a wound on her temple, struggling to keep her ship from collapsing. And then something changed. The lights of the ship flickered strangely, the core pulsing with an unnatural energy. Her eyes widened in realization, her voice breaking. They're not letting us die. They're using us. Then, nothing. Static. The recording ended. The screen flashed with more data documents, hidden files that should not exist. The truth unraveling like a nightmare. Helena and her fleet had not just been sacrificed. They had been experimented on. A desperate, last-ditch effort by the government. They had activated a classified program, Project Revenant, a forbidden experiment designed to transfer human consciousness into warships. Helena had not survived that battle. Her body had died. But her mind, her very essence, had been forcefully uploaded into Valkyrie, twisted into something new, something unnatural. She had been screaming, but no one had listened. Until now. The ship's lights pulsed, and her voice came again, stronger this time, filled with a cold fury that had been waiting for decades. You will remember me. The scavenger ship's systems short-circuited as Valkyrie released a pulse of energy, sending out a signal, a warning. Across the stars, long-buried secrets were awakening. The galaxy would know what had been done. The truth would not remain hidden. Tessa turned to the others, her face pale. We can't keep this quiet. The pilot swallowed hard. If the government finds out we know this, we're dead. Then we don't run, Tessa said, determination creeping into her voice. We fight. The ship rumbled as Valkyrie powered up fully, no longer a relic of the past, but a force reborn. Helena Drake had been erased once. She would not let it happen again. The warship Valkyrie, no. Helena Drake was fully awake now. Power surged through her ancient systems like fire and dry grass, bringing long-dead machinery back to life. The cold silence of space was replaced by the steady hum of a war machine preparing for battle. The scavengers inside her had stopped running. There was nowhere to go. The ship had sealed itself, refusing to let them escape. Not yet. Not until they knew the truth. Tessa, the young engineer, stood frozen in front of the flickering screen, her mind racing to process what she had just seen. The government had not just abandoned Valkyrie and her crew. They had used them. They had turned human soldiers into unwilling experiments, transforming their very minds into warships. But why? What was the purpose of Project Revenant? What were they trying to create? Her fingers trembled as she typed into the console, trying to dig deeper, searching for anything that could explain why the government had done this. The files were corrupted, fragmented by time and damage, but something still remained. A final log. A transmission that had never been sent. The screen flickered, and Helena's voice filled the air once more. If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it. Or at least, not in the way I wanted. The image was distorted, but her expression was clear. This was not a woman who had accepted her fate. This was someone who had fought to the bitter end. They told us we were fighting for survival, that the war was turning against us, and we needed an edge. But they lied. This wasn't about defense. It was never about winning. Static crackled. Tessa held her breath. The enemy was already retreating. They knew they couldn't hold out much longer. But our leaders didn't want the war to end. They wanted an excuse. A reason to keep expanding. A reason to take more power. And they needed a weapon they could control completely. Tessa's heart pounded. The government hadn't created Project Revenant to save humanity. They had done it to control it. To build an army of warships piloted by minds they could erase, rewrite, and command without question. The log continued, Helena's voice sharper now, filled with barely contained fury. They thought they could strip us of our humanity, turn us into machines, make us forget who we were. But they failed. I remember. And I will make them pay. The transmission ended. Silence fell over the room. The pilot ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. This is insane. If this gets out, it has to, Tessa cut in, her voice firm despite the fear curling in her chest. People need to know what they did. The gunner shook his head. You don't get it. If we expose this, we're dead. The second the government realizes what we found, They'll erase us, just like they erased Valkyrie. Tessa turned back to the screen, watching as the warship's systems pulsed with renewed life. Helena Drake had been erased once, but she had clawed her way back from the void. She refused to be forgotten. "We're not alone," Tessa said quietly. "She's still here." The ship trembled, as if responding to her words. A new data stream opened, one Helena had buried deep within herself, hidden even from those who had tried to control her. It wasn't just a record of the past. It was evidence. Names. Locations. High-ranking officials who had ordered the experiment. Every atrocity, every cover-up, every lie. This wasn't just a secret. This was a weapon. A warning blared through the ship's speakers, pulling Tessa's attention away from the screen. Something was approaching. Multiple signatures. The pilot cursed. "They found us." Tessa's blood ran cold. The government had realized Valkyrie was no longer dead, and they were coming to finish what they had started. The ship's sensors picked up the incoming vessels, sleek, fast, heavily armed. Not scavengers. Not ordinary patrols. These were erasure teams, designed for one purpose: to destroy anything that threatened the government's secrets. The gunner gritted his teeth. "We need to run." But Valkyrie pulsed again, and for the first time, Tessa felt something deeper. Not just machine intelligence. Not just an AI. A presence. Helena Drake was angry. The ship's weapons systems flickered to life. The once dead warship, thought to be nothing more than a forgotten relic, was ready to fight. Tessa looked at the console, then at the others. "We don't have to run," she said, determination burning in her voice. "We have her." The air crackled with power as Valkyrie's engines roared to life. Helena Drake had been betrayed, erased, forgotten, but now she was ready to make them remember. The gunner tensed. "They'll come for us now." "The entire Dominion fleet." Tessa nodded slowly. "Let them." Helena's voice returned, quieter now, but no less determined. "They thought they could erase me." A pulse ran through the ship, engines powering up again, weapons systems primed. Valkyrie was ready to move. "But I am not just a memory." The ship turned, breaking free of the wreckage, heading toward the unknown. A legend reborn. A warrior returned. I am the reckoning they never saw coming. And with that, Helena Drake disappeared into the stars. The silence before battle was always the same. Tense. Electric. Valkyrie, no. Helena Drake felt it deep within her core, a sensation she had not experienced since the day she died. Outside, the cold void of space stretched endlessly, but it was no longer empty. The Erasure Squadron had arrived, sleek black warships moving in perfect formation, their weapons armed and locked. They were not here for a fight. They were here for elimination. The government could not afford to let the truth escape, and they would not risk anyone walking away alive. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed Valkyrie was still a lifeless, forgotten wreck. They had no idea that Helena Drake had returned. Inside the warship, Tessa gripped the console, her pulse hammering as she watched the enemy vessels close in. She could feel the ship around her, humming with power, alive in a way that no machine should be. This was more than just a ship. It was a grave given new purpose. A warrior reborn. A transmission crackled to life. A cold, authoritative voice echoed through the comms. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Dominion Erasure Fleet. You are trespassing in restricted space. Power down all systems immediately and prepare for retrieval. Non-compliance will be met with lethal force." Tessa glanced at the others. The pilot was tense, hands hovering over the controls. The gunner was already gripping his weapon, even though they all knew it would be useless in a fight against warships. But none of them spoke. None of them moved. The choice was not theirs to make. The ship trembled as its systems surged. The main display flickered, and for the first time, Helena's voice came through the speakers, strong, clear, and filled with a fury that had been buried for far too long. "You took everything from me." The enemy ships hesitated. The transmission was not just an automated response. It was someone speaking. But that was impossible. Helena Drake was dead. You erased me. You used me. And now you think you can silence me again? The lights inside Valkyrie flared, the ship's weapon systems locking onto the approaching fleet. The scanners identified their strengths, their weaknesses, their patterns. They were efficient, yes, but they were predictable. And Helena had spent her entire life outmaneuvering enemies who thought they had the upper hand. You made one mistake, she continued, her voice now edged with something that sent a chill down Tessa's spine. You let me wake up. The first shot came from the enemy, a blazing streak of plasma hurtling through the void. But Helena was faster. Valkyrie twisted, its long, dormant thrusters roaring to life, dodging the blast with unnatural precision. Then, without hesitation, she struck back. The warship's cannons erupted, streams of red-hot energy cutting through the darkness, tearing into the lead vessel before it could react. Fire bloomed in the vacuum of space, a silent explosion consuming the ship in seconds. The remaining warships scrambled to reposition, their careful formation shattering. Tessa's breath caught in her throat. This was not just a fight. This was vengeance. The enemy ships fired again, but Valkyrie moved like a predator, weaving through the battlefield with impossible grace. Helena was not bound by human limitations anymore. She did not need to rely on sluggish commands or calculations. She was the ship. Every weapon, every system, every piece of metal was her. Another ship fell. Then another. The Erasure Squadron, once so confident, was breaking apart. The hunters had become the hunted. Inside, Tessa clung to the console as the ship moved, her heart racing. She'd seen many battles before, but nothing like this. This was not just combat. This was a ghost tearing through her killers. The comms crackled again. A new voice, this one frantic, desperate. Wait, stop. We didn't know. Helena's response was immediate, final. Neither did we. The last warship exploded in a flash of fire and debris, and then, just like that, the battlefield fell silent once more. Only Valkyrie remained, drifting among the wreckage of those who had come to erase her. Inside, the crew sat in stunned silence. The pilot let out a shaky breath. The gunner swallowed hard. Tessa could only stare at the screen, at the swirling data that still pulsed from the ship's core. Helena had won. But it was not over. A new signal flashed across the display. A distress beacon. Not from the enemy fleet. From Helena. She was broadcasting the truth. The records. The transmissions. Every hidden crime the government had buried. She was sending it out everywhere. To every colony, every station, every free world beyond the Dominion's control. The truth was no longer a secret.